You are listening to This is Oklahoma, hosted by Mike Hearn, telling stories of Oklahomans and those that have made it their home.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of This is Oklahoma Podcast. Mike Hearn here, your host, back with another episode. Excited to share this episode with you today, but before we do, I've got to thank our sponsors. First of all, the Oklahoma Hall of Fame. They've been a huge part of this podcast for the last few years. So the Oklahoma Hall of Fame have been sharing Oklahoma's story through its people since 1927. For more information on the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, go to www.oklahomahof.com. And for daily updates, go to oklahomahof on Instagram and give them a follow. Our other sponsor today is Chickasaw Nation. Now, the Chickasaw Nation have sponsored pretty much everything in Oklahoma. They're a huge supporter of Oklahoma, and it's an honor to have their name and their brand supporting this podcast. A huge shout out to Governor Anatoby for supporting this podcast. It really means a lot. Our third sponsor is Diffie Ford Lincoln down in El Reno. Now, this one makes me so happy because these guys are great friends of mine, play a lot of golf together. I've bought my cars from them, do most of my oil changes down there, have a cup of coffee, hang out down in El Reno. It's a good spot to go. And not only are they great friends, but they provide a great service. So for over 60 years, third generation family owned Oklahoma business down in El Reno. They're also in Bethany as well. So people in the Bethany area know the Diffies really well. But if you're looking for anything new, used, Ford, Lincoln, or whatever, I'm sure they could find anything you want. Check them out, diffieford.net, and then on Instagram at diffiefordlincoln. This episode is presented by Citizens Bank of Edmond. Citizens Bank of Edmond has been serving Edmond since 1901. They pride themselves on investing in the community and are here for all your personal and business banking needs. For more information, go to mycitizens.bank and follow them on Instagram at Citizens Edmond, as well as go bank there, because I bank there too. It's been a fantastic personal experience for me. I've had my podcast account there now, my podcast business account there now for 4 years now, I think, and it's been fantastic. So definitely worth your time. They're a great group of people, and they're always there to answer the phone when I forget my password, because I seem to forget it daily. So yeah, go to Citizens Edmond and check them out. It's been awesome. This episode is brought to you by the Doghouse OKC. Recently, I have been in need of some doggy daycare for my two pups, and the Doghouse have come in clutch. The team over there are incredible. They've taken care of my two golden doodles, and so it's been an honor to partner with them on the podcast and share the love. And the one thing that I do with the sponsors that I have is stuff that I use and recommend, like the Diffies with my car, Hall of Fame. They're awesome. Citizens Banks, where I bank. Chickasaw Nation, huge supporter of Oklahoma. And adding to that is the Doghouse. And so if you're in need of doggy daycare in the day or boarding overnight, they do grooming and other cool things too. But I've had a fantastic experience, and it's an honor and a privilege to share this with you too. So go to thedoghouseokc.com and follow them on Instagram at thedoghouseokc. And hopefully our pups will run into each other. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of This is Oklahoma. Mike Hearn here, host, back with another episode. Gonna talk broadband with you today, which probably sounds like a really boring topic, but I promise you the next 45 minutes to an hour is going to be extremely insightful, and you'll wish that we had broadband a lot sooner. But my guest today is Director Mike Sanders of, I guess, the Oklahoma Broadband office. Is that the best way to put it?
Yes, you got it.
Yeah. Well, thanks for inviting me to your office. Excited to dive into the story and share a little bit about you. You're born and raised in Kingfisher and still live in Kingfisher.
Yes, born and raised in Kingfisher. That's where I am. Mm-hmm. I took a little hiatus in my professional career. I lived on the East Coast, and then I came back home, and that's where I am still today.
You play golf out there?
I've attempted to play golf.
I played out there once.
Yeah, it's a great course, but I should not ever play on any of your scrambles ever. I'm not a very good golf teammate for sure.
Yeah. So looking through your story, politics is very interweaves into it a lot, and it seems like from a young age. Mm-hmm. Tell me about growing up. Why does it go down that route? I know you go to Oklahoma Christian and do pre-law, but before you get to Oklahoma Christian, tell me a little bit about growing up and how early do you think that I want to be in politics? Or does it come later?
Gosh, it's a great story. I was 9 years old,
Oh, wow.
9 years old. And most 9-year-olds, are out riding their bikes. Back then we didn't have, the Game Boys or the Nintendos or Sega systems. And I'm definitely aging myself because I'm sure there's better equipment than what that is. But anyway, there was a gentleman who was working for my dad. And my family owned, at that time, the funeral home in Kingfisher. And there was a gentleman who decided to run for mayor. Again, they're nonpartisan races, but I really respected Mr. Woodward. And so he called me one Saturday afternoon and said, I'm going to go knock doors and put up signs for mayor. First of all, I didn't know what a mayor was. I didn't know what knocking doors meant. But I said, okay, great. I think he probably promised me like a milkshake from Brahms or something. So I was all in. But what was really interesting about that day was it was the start, because unbeknownst to me, of course, my dad, who owned the funeral home, knew everyone in town. They, when I'd go knock doors and hand a little flyer to the person asking them to vote for Mr. Woodward, they said they'd ask what my name was and who my parents were. And everyone knew who my parents were. And I thought that was the coolest thing. Well, then as the day went on, I started hearing about issues with noise ordinances and potholes and, barking dogs at 3 a.m. And there was just something, I guess you could say, that the bug bit me. Yeah. And so Mr. Woodward went on to win. I remember being at the little watch party at his house. There's like 20 of us, and I thought it was the coolest thing ever. But I also remember that was in the spring of 1984. And there's a huge significance in 1984 because that was also Reagan-Bush re-elect.
Okay.
Now, Mike, I had no idea. I mean, you see the Reagan sign behind me.
In the corner, yeah.
Yeah. I didn't know what a Republican was. I didn't know what a Democrat was. But I remember one day we were watching the news at 6 o'clock, 5:36, and there was this gentleman. And he was given a stump speech, and he talked about America, and he talked about that shiny city on a hill. And I remember turning back, because I think we were on the floor at the time, like sitting down, and I remember my dad's recliner. He was behind us, and I said, Dad, that's what I want to do when I grow up. Now, I don't know if my dad believed me, if I was wanting to be president, but public service. And, obviously, I equate that to my dad because he too was in public service in a different way, but still serving our community. And Reagan went on to win 49 states, lost Minnesota, lost the District of Columbia. I remember staying up late. It was all red on the map, and I thought it was the coolest thing ever, Ronald Reagan. And I started just to dive in to Ronald Reagan and his background. And then I started learning about other candidates. And so I started working for our local state rep, our local state senate, and I moved my way up to be involved as a volunteer for those folks running for governor and Congress. And ultimately, I volunteered for every race I could in and around my district. My area led me to an opportunity in high school to be one of the high school Bush Quail 1992 high school coordinators, which I thought was really cool. We did not win that one. Graduated from Kingfisher High School, went on to Oklahoma Christian, became a college Republican chairman over there. We had in fact, the Friday before the 1994 election, former President Bush 41, which is where that picture right there, he came to Oklahoma Christian. Jack Kemp came to Oklahoma Christian in 96, and I was helping lead all the charges there for those. And then ultimately just being involved, in all these campaigns. Frank Lucas, I was his field director in 1998. An opportunity presented itself in the fall of 1999. I had never been on a successful presidential campaign. And I faxed my resume to Austin, Texas, because at the time Governor Bush was running for president, and I believed in his mission. I believed in what he was saying and how he could return respectability back to the White House and America. And I remember sending my resume there, and we faxed back then, again, dating my age. But within minutes, I got a call from a gentleman. I'll never forget this. Scott Douglas is his name. And we visited, and I'll never forget this. He told me, and I remember like I nailed this job. I had this job until the part where he said, "We don't have any openings here. If you want to come down and volunteer." Now, I'd been on paid staff, and here I am, 23, 24 years old, and I'm like, I've been there, I've done that. Now I'm trying to make some money, and which, by the way, you don't make a lot of money on campaigns. But I remember he said this. He said, "This will be a leap of faith." And I've never forgotten that. And I remember thinking that over. This was in October of 1999. My lease was up at the end of the year, and I literally made the decision to pack my stuff up, move to Austin, Texas, where I knew nobody. I knew one person down there, and she helped me find my apartment. By the way, she's great friend. But and the rest is kind of history from there, because there, we jumped on the Bush Cheney team soon thereafter as a paid staffer, which my parents appreciated. Worked all the way through the campaign. We were successful. Led me to the White House as the director of White House interns, stayed there the first term, stayed with the Bush administration till 2004, went over to the Department of Agriculture as a political appointee, worked in the area of USDA rural development, came back home in 2008, served 12 years in the legislature, and I'm kind of here.
Yeah.
So
I did see Georgetown in your bio, though.
I did, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I always at a time I thought about going to law school.
Okay, hence the pre-law degree.
Hence the pre-law history degree, and but then life happens, campaigns, and this. But I always wanted to have that secondary degree.
Yeah.
And so this would have been in 2006. A friend of mine told me about this graduate program at Georgetown, and seemed interesting. It seemed like this is kind of what I think I need to do, because I had no idea that I'd be coming back home in 2 years and running for office. But I researched the program, looked into it, and really realized this is what I want to do. So I applied, did what I need to do, and did, and got in. Which I was not to say that I was a little surprised and shocked, but I kind of was. And so for 2 years I worked on my graduate degree, and then life happens, and I this opportunity presented itself, so I had to put that on hold. And if you look at my resume, it's in progress. 15 years later, we're still working on we're still working on it. But yeah, Georgetown, go Hoyas! It was a great program. Really, Dr. Nurnberger was a fantastic professor.
Yeah. So like you said, you take this leap of faith, go to Austin, one person, you're working as, you're volunteering. Take us through that, dive into it. What's that like going down there? And obviously it's exciting for you, and this is where you want to be, and that's why you take that leap of faith. But, you don't think that this is going to lead you to the White House, right?
No.
At this moment.
Gosh, no. You got to win. Yeah. And even if you do win, the chances of that going to that level is slim to none. I think probably the word that comes to mind is humbling, because I had done that when I was not some of the work, whether it be on the comment line or the burn bags, documents and collecting that, or stuffing envelopes. I mean, that's the jobs those are the jobs that you did when you were 10, 11, 12, 15, 16, 17 years old. And then when you become a paid staffer on congressional campaigns and gubernatorial campaigns, then you get to be in a situation like this where, well, we're going to knock you back down about 4 pegs on the pole. And it was like, But and those people who know me know that this is no surprise to them. I had saved up money. I mean, so I had enough money to live for 5-6 months. Money was getting thin, of course, but then the opportunity presented itself, and they had an opening. And to be honest with you, when they said, and I had never been in a management position, but when they called and said, would you be interested in becoming the the volunteer coordinator for our interns and all the volunteers? I think I accepted the job without even knowing how much it was going to pay. Mm-hmm. So it was just one of those things where every campaign, you've got to have those very important pieces, and those important pieces are volunteers to do the jobs that you don't have the money to pay for. So humbling is the word I take away from that. But you've got to have those type of worker bees, and I was not going to be so proud that I wasn't going to be able to do that kind of work. Because I knew that if I wanted an opportunity to shine and prove myself to the powers to be, that I had to work my tail off.
Yeah. And obviously everything works out great. You continue to climb the ladder, and I guess is it the same job that takes you to the White House, or is that a different job?
It was kind of a segue. It was the same but different, because being in charge of the volunteers, there were hundreds of them, and I would have 100 plus interns from all the different universities in the Austin area. It is what I would call kind of like my AAA club. Mm-hmm. You get to the White House and become the director of White House interns. You get them from all universities. You are now in the major league. So, but it was a great training ground, and I had some really, really fine mentors along the way that I was able to be put in contact with. I can remember Anita McBride, who went on later to serve Mrs. Bush as her chief of staff, and she put me in contact with a gal named Shara Castle, who was Bush 41's intern coordinator. And so she shared with me what they did, and I took what she did and incorporated my own twist to it, and had a great run there. And the amount of young people that I came in contact with, I'll never forget. I'm still very, very close to many of those young people. I say young people, they're now in their 40s, but it was a pretty special time. Yeah,
well, and then like I said, you get this job. You're at the White House. You're working for the administration. You're working for Bush, and you go back to that 9-year-old, right? And you're like, never thought I'd be here, Kingfisher, Oklahoma, to the White House. Like, we kind of made it.
Yeah, not at 25. Right. I mean, I was a pretty young director of a program there at the White House, especially, and I thought, maybe if luck would run on my side, maybe when I'm in my 50s or whatever, I could, come back. But I never thought in a million years, I'd be 25 years old, director of a program, of the most prestigious internship program in the world, really, and leading these young people and giving these young people opportunities. Never thought that would be possible.
Yeah. What did you learn from that time? Is there anything, big takeaways that kind of set you off and put you, focused on something for your career? Patience, number one. And I learned how to manage. I learned how to manage people. When you're there for 4 years and you had 3, I would say semesters of interns, college student aged young adults, and over 1,000 is what the number actually was of young people. You hear it all, you see it all, and one of the things that I also learned was in my years of being a volunteer or being a paid staffer was, if I ever had the opportunity to manage people, here's what I would never do, or here's what I would do. And I always felt that
if sometimes because I was that underdog kid, and I was always going to give those underdogs an opportunity, whether you went to Harvard or you went to Redlands Community College in El Reno, Oklahoma. You had the same possibility to serve in the White House as anyone. And I believe I gave a lot of kids that probably normally may not have had that opportunity, or at least that's what I think. I think I gave kids opportunities that probably normally would never have done that. So I do think learning how to manage people, understanding people, I think was one of the biggest takeaways.
Yeah. And then, like I said, things come to an end. You sort of come back, I guess, right?
Yeah, and I'll tell you, there's a funny little twist to this too, because my years with the Bush administration was honor of a lifetime, and doing the White House and doing my job over at the Department of Agriculture, I met a young lady up there, and she just so happened to be someone that I was like pretty fond of. And I think my greatest takeaway from my days in Washington was meeting Nellie, and obviously sharing a life with her. That was my big takeaway from my time. And again, ultimately in 2008, had an opportunity to come back home and run for office.
Yeah. Brought her back to Oklahoma. She didn't grow up here?
Oh, no. No.
How was that conversation?
Let me tell you, I flew her in at night. And the grain elevators, I said, oh, yeah, those are skyscrapers. And that'll make sense here in a second, because she grew up and was born and raised in Washington, went to school in Rhode Island, and she cut her professional teeth in the workforce in New York. And actually, she came, or actually we met at an event. She was actually on another date with a guy that I actually knew. Kind of funny story there. But she'd only been in Washington just a few months before she'd never met anyone from Oklahoma. And I jokingly, when I saw her, we started talking, and I jokingly said, well, what do you want to do when you grow up, is what she asked me. And I said, well, someday I'm going to be the governor of Oklahoma. And I laughed because I thought it was kind of a funny deal. But here's what's got really funny. I did not know who she was. She quickly came back at me and said, oh, really? Well, funny you should say that, because my great-grandparents were governors. In fact, my great-grandmother was the first female governor of the United States. And so immediately, as soon as she said that, I was like, oh my gosh, she's thinking that I am this typical DC tool, if you will. And I just felt about this big, and I'm like, that's not how I didn't want it to come across arrogantly. And we laugh about it to this day. But boy, I took one on the chin that evening. But she went out with me 3 weeks later. So the rest is history.
That's awesome. And then obviously now you live here.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you come back and you go into agriculture when you come home. Well,
I was in agriculture in Washington.
Oh, okay, got you.
I do live in an agriculture community.
Sure.
Which is one of the reasons.
That's the tie.
That's the tie, because I wanted to have some real meat and potatoes and policy, ag policy, when I came back home.
Okay.
It's one thing to run on, being at the White House, but you were the director of interns. It's not exactly meat and potatoes when it comes to ag policy, especially area where I live. So when I came back home after serving almost 8 years, we hit the ground running. There were two other gentlemen in the race. It was going to be a Republican primary, and we had a general election, but the real race was in the primary. I was home probably 2 weeks before I announced. Now, what's interesting about this is Nellie was still back in D.C. because at that point we'd already been engaged. And so she's doing all the wedding stuff.
Yeah.
I am back home knocking doors and working my tail off. So I don't even see Nellie till 2 days before we get married, literally. And so we were apart for 5 months, I guess, that's somewhere along and through there. So I'm out there campaigning, and doing all the things that I need to do. So planning a wedding, getting married, and then having a week honeymoon during a very tough primary race is not something I would suggest people do. But we were able to do it, and we were successful.
Build strength in the relationship.
It builds something. It builds something. Goodness gracious.
Yeah. And the ag thing too, obviously that's kind of close to your heart. You know, you grew up in Kingfisher. It's ag all around, you know, all the towns. And then I love driving up through there because I usually drive up through Kingfisher on my way to Enid.
Yep.
For something.
You passed right by my house.
Yeah.
Right there on Main Street.
Part of me wants to just retire on 5 acres and just hit golf balls into a sunset for the rest of my life. But maybe we've got time. Maybe that'll happen sometime. So yeah, I guess, you know, you come home, you work at the House of Representatives, and you know you're very, very successful there. You have your consulting company that you start up as well, right?
Yes.
After that,
after of course, Oklahoma has term limits, so I served my 12 years, and again, it was an honor to serve that district, House District 59, Western Oklahoma. I was too young to retire. So it's one of those things. Well, what are you going to do after the legislature? And we threw around some things. I thought about some things, talked to some people, and an opportunity really just, if I wanted to do something and do it right, I needed to start my own company. And that's exactly what we did, Sanders Strategy and Consulting Group. And for 2 years that I ran my company, great relationships, great clients, did I think a lot of really, really good things, and that ultimately led to this job, because it's one of those things. I was not out looking for any work. I was able to set my own time. I was able to set my own schedule. I guess the only drawback I would have is I never liked working from home. I am not a working from home kind of guy. I like an office. I like the structure, you know, because you can't leave stuff at home. You can't leave stuff behind and go home. So everything was still there, but I had my back office, and so that's where I did all my work. And then I had a 2-year-old Labrador that always felt that he needed my attention and felt like he needed to be a lap dog, which he still insists that he's a lap dog, although he's about 95 pounds. He's anything but a lap dog. Funny enough, his name is Reagan. So I mean, it all comes together.
Yeah. So yeah, like you said, perfect transition. This thing comes around, and you're like, what is broadband, and why does it? I mean, why is it impactful, and why should I even be considered or be interested in this?
You know, I'll tell you. And the first time I ever heard about connectivity and broadband was when I was at the Department of Agriculture, and the area that I was working in was USDA rural development. There were a couple of mission areas inside that: rural utility service, rural business, and rural housing. But under rural utilities service, there were opportunities for states to apply for high-speed internet. And that's when I really got my first taste. And here I am, because the internet at that time in 2004 wasn't that old, but you had to be connected. You know, you had your main center areas of the state where all the population was, but then where I live, it wasn't as prominent. And so that was my first taste. And then obviously as years come along, you just take for granted, you know, the ability to get on to get on the computer and to use your phone and all of those things. And so I really started to think about this opportunity when this opportunity presented itself. And then I thought to myself, serving in a rural legislator, as a rural legislator, I heard all the stories. Well, we're not connected, and this and that, and you know, a lot of the companies that are your investor owned, they're going to stay where all the population is, and so we have the rural co-ops out trying to serve, but it's expensive. And the more I thought about this, the more I thought, you know, this is no longer a luxury. This is a way of life, and I've said this before, but I'll say it again. If COVID taught us anything, we could run $1 billion company from our couch in our living room. And the key to that, though, is being connected. To participate in the global market, global economy, you've got to be able to have the connection. So at first, when this opportunity presented itself, I thought, it's probably above my pay grade. I don't know anything really about broadband. But the more I thought about it, the more people began to talk to me, and the more I realized, listen, I don't need to be an expert in all the technical things. What I will do is surround myself with people way smarter than me, and that's exactly what I did. And people that live, breathe, internet, eat and breathe broadband. Those are the type of people. We had to bring in a finance director. We had to bring in an attorney. In fact, we had to run legislation to get an attorney here, general counsel. We had to bring in grant analysts and procurement officers and those type of people. And really, to be honest with you, when you're asked to build out broadband but also build a state agency, let me tell you, it is not easy. But again, I learned long time ago that if you put good people and smart people around you, they're going to make you look good. And if there's one thing I know, it's people. I can read people like a book, and I can read body language pretty well. And so I knew that to build a team, we had to establish the right culture. We had to set the vision, and then you hire people that can do the job, and you get out of their way. You trust them, and you let them work. And that has been the key to our success here.
The hard part is getting out of the way, right? And trusting that. And obviously you've done this for so many years and started, like I said, back with the interns and thousands. And, when it comes up to building this, it's a lot of practice.
It is. And I'm OCD a little bit. And now my wife thinks I'm really kind of like more than a little bit, but it's one of those things where it was tough when you give people opportunities and want people to do a job, they've got to do it and do it well and do it right. And sometimes I always felt, well, by gosh, I'm just going to do it myself because I know it's going to be done right. Well, the larger your organization becomes, the bigger and more complex issues come about. You've got to put people in that know that area, that are experts in that area. So I knew that over the years that I have to trust and build, and it wasn't always easy. I'm gonna be honest with you, but I learned, and it hasn't always been hugs and kisses either. I mean, sometimes you fall on your face, and you trust people and they let you down. But that still didn't stop me from continuing the practice of hiring smart people, letting them build, letting them grow, giving them opportunities to shine. Everything else will take care of itself.
Yeah. So you start April 10th last year?
Last year, April 10th.
So coming on, by the time this goes out, it'll be just over a year. And talk a little bit about, for people who have no idea what broadband is and the impact that you guys are making and the work that you've done. You guys have made leaps and bounds in the first year, and I know it's only just getting the ball rolling. So brag on yourselves a little bit.
Well,
tell me how good your team is and educate the people listening.
Well, I tell you, and I say this, and I think my team probably thinks I'm just saying this, but I truly do have the best team in state government, and I mean that wholeheartedly. I've been on many teams in state government and federal government, and this team, there is no comparison. So that's number one. But let me take you back to April 10th, because the first thing that I realized when I walked into this office, the Oklahoma Broadband office, first thing I realized was, one, we did not have high-speed internet. We could not connect to the internet from the Oklahoma Broadband office. So I knew that was going to be a real problem. So that was the first thing that we got fixed. But then to realize with the current folks that were here, what do we do? How do we do it? What have we learned? I need experts. We need to build capacity. So I already had a great team here. We have just built upon that. So running a state agency, you're going to be audited, so you're going to have to put in a finance team. Check. We've done that. We are federally, we run and administer a federal grants program. You better find grant analysts and compliance officers that know how to run a federal grant program or any federal program or any grant program. Check. We've done that. We have to be able to communicate. And building upon Tim, who was here, he was our lone comms guy. He was also doing policy and taking out the trash and everything else that this office, needed. And so we had to build upon that. We had to go and part of our mission is to visit with our tribal nations. So we had to bring in an outreach coordinator. Then there was the idea of making sure we keep the train on the track. So hiring a chief of staff was essential. So I say all that to say we went from a staff of 3 to 18. We're going to have to continue to build out more because we've got more money coming down the pike. But I can tell you from where we were to where we are, night and day difference. And I'll tell you, this is what I will take a victory lap on. I heard all the noise out there. They can't do it. They're gonna be biased towards this type of company or this type of company. They don't know what they're doing. And I sat there and I would just smile and I always said, trust the process. Nobody in this state and no one in this country has ever done this before. Will we take a couple stumbles? Sure we do. That's life, right? But I love proving people wrong. Yeah. And when we were able, with the help of our fantastic board, the Oklahoma Broadband Governing Board, who approved the 142 projects the internet service providers will be building here very soon. They approved that in late January, and I would have never thought we would have 142 projects, but we can get into that here in a minute. But I say I wanted to just really hit on the fact that you've got to be able to have a great team. You have to be able to have your team trust each other, work with each other. May not always agree with each other. May not, hold hands and hang out with each other. But we have to work together, and that is the thing that I wanted, was to build that culture of mutual respect. We have got to work together. And that, to me, I've always come in from a team aspect, and that's been something that we are very proud about. And then, obviously, having the ability to knock, it wouldn't even be a double or a triple. I mean, I really think we hit a home run this first step out of the box, and we still have 2 more boxes to step out of. So we are really, really excited with where we're going and how we're doing this. Yeah, 142 projects. Is each specific project like a town or a location? How does that work? It's a great question. It's locations. Okay. Some are in town, some are not. I'm not going to bore you with acronyms because that's how people in government talk. They speak in acronyms and they expect you to know exactly what those acronyms are. Yeah. But we had a very open and transparent application process. It was a competitive application process. And we had a bunch of applications for areas of the state that were unserved and underserved. And what I mean by that is it is all based off speed of the internet. So if you hear the number 25 down, 3 up, that's pretty slow, pretty awful internet. But if you hear the term 100 down, 20 up, or 100 down, or 100 up, that's pretty good speed. That's really good speed. I'm sure the listeners to this podcast, they've probably had opportunities or have seen things where that little TikTok thing is just going in circles. That means it's slow. It's really slow speed. So the programs that we are administering have a minimum, 100 down, 20 up, but 100 symmetrical. So we're getting some really, really, really high and good quality speed. Those 142 projects, honestly, Mike, I thought we would get 25 or 30. I had no idea that it would be 142, nor did I think that we would have the coverage that we did. 57 of the 77 counties will have at least one project. Yes, some of these will have some towns. Many of these are out in the rural areas. This is a rural issue.
Yeah.
When you cut through all the noise, this is a rural issue. That doesn't mean that there's not pockets in urban areas that have slow or bad internet. It's just that they have had opportunities for years and competition over the years where the rural company or the rural areas have not had, and they've been kind of left in the dark a little bit. Not anymore. This project is specifically built to get those unserved and underserved Oklahomans an opportunity to do business from home, to get their health records to health providers, education, economic development. I can go down the road of all the benefits that this is going to do. This is a game-changing mission that we're on, and we're excited.
Yeah, you don't realize how much you need it until it turns itself off, right?
That's exactly right.
Like for me, when I moved into my house a few years ago, you know, my dogs chewed up the AT&T line multiple times. And it's so frustrating, you know, when your Wi-Fi is like done on your phone or your whatever it is, and you're like, I'm without internet, you know, or it's slow. Like it's,
you take it for granted.
Well, you say you do. And it's, I'm interested to hear kind of how Oklahoma fares compared to other states as well on like the rural issue, right? Because everyone kind of west, you know, Oklahoma and west is, until you hit kind of like California, is pretty rural, isn't it?
That's right.
All the states are. So interested to hear that, and also what's the plan going forward too.
Perfect. Yeah, if you look at the FCC map, and you can look there on their website, it is a lot of purple, which means very rural, unserved, underserved, and then the lighter pockets are served. It is one of those situations. When I first looked at that map, I thought, oh my gosh, how in the world are we going to be able to do this? And is this even going to be enough money? And I'm optimistic when I say that, because yes, I think it is. And yes, I think we can get there. The overall, this project coming down from the feds was the birth of this, or the outgrowth was during COVID. It was during COVID. People realized people had to stay home, and it was fine when you only had one tablet, but when you have your kids and everyone else in your house and you have 5, then everything slows down and nothing works. So that was the brainchild. That was the birthing of that. We realized that in order for us to get 100% connectivity, we knew that we were going to have to go out to these communities. We knew that we were going to have to go out and have conversations with the ISPs, which is our internet service providers, our co-ops, our telephone companies. We knew that we were going to have to go out and talk to our opinion leaders in these communities that have never had high-speed internet. We had to go out and talk to our tribal partners. 2/3 of Oklahoma land is tribal land. So obviously working with them is critical. We realized that if we can get all of us moving in the same direction, because this is an issue that we've been talking about for decades. Seriously, decades, at least 2.5, 3, 20, 25 years of this. So once you realize where you have been and where you are, then you can set a course for where we're going. And all of those puzzles, with other state directors and getting guidance from NTIA, the National Telecommunication folks, the FCC, the Department of Commerce, and all the folks that are administering these funds, going to these different conferences and learning from other states. Oklahoma was said to, before I took this job, we're behind. Truth of the matter is, that couldn't be further from the truth. Most states, and this is what I think a lot of folks don't understand, most folks assumed And you know what that means when people assume.
Yeah.
But what most states did when they received the ARPA money from the federal government was they didn't put it in broadband. They put it in healthcare or education or whatnot. There were only a few states that actually took that ARPA money and said, we're going to build out some broadband. Oklahoma was smart. Our legislative leaders at the Capitol were able to take $374 million, one pot of money, and $159 million in the other pot of money, and said, go build out broadband infrastructure. Oklahoma was one of the top states that had that. So I say that to say this. We were able to not only get this first pot of money out, our ARPA, state and local fiscal recovery, we will have here in the next few months our last part of ARPA, the $159 million, the capital projects fund application process completed. That means we're going to have over $500 million plus private investment from these ISPs in that. So we're talking maybe $600-700 million. On top of that, we're going to have the workforce already here in Oklahoma. We're going to have the materials already here in Oklahoma before this big pot of money, which is, again, another acronym, but it's called BEAD. Okay. That Oklahoma's going to get $797.4 million. Many states will be in the billions.
Yeah.
But the catch is we're already going to have our workforce here. We're already going to have the materials here. It is going to be a seamless transition from our ARPA, State and Local Fiscal Recovery Fund and Capital Project Fund into our BEAD process, which I think that's going to be something that we are really blessed and fortunate, and I appreciate the governor. I appreciate the legislative leaders to have that foresight to do that. I will be honest, and I'll say this. I thought for a while I was going to lose every bit of hair that I had on my head because it was, it was a challenging first few months, but, we can look back now and kind of laugh and say, we did it.
Yeah. It's just logistically thinking how you can just have the material of the stuff that people have been dealing with trying to get material for building houses has been hard. Mm-hmm. Can't imagine the stuff that you've had to go through to get the material for all this broadband stuff just to have it ready. Made in America. Yeah, that too, right? To have it ready, and be here, and that's a huge weight off your shoulders to have that, because, like I said, as soon as that money comes in, we're ready to go. That's right. And the thing is too, we have 2 years. 2 years on this first ARPA and capital project fund money. We have 2 years to not only build it, but it has to be operational. So that's really, time is not our friend here. Right. So building that and getting it operational within 2 years, that's a heavy task. Yeah, and just hearing you talk about it, you're excited about it. You have it, like I said, proving people wrong is something that you just love to do, right? And I think we all do. I love doing it too. And it might be the competitive or athlete side of me, whatever it is. Yep. Just when someone doubts you, right? You don't back down. You just say, no, I'm going to prove you wrong. That's right. Interested to know, when you took this though, what time in the last 12 months was there a mind switch? So I'm not in over my head, but I know I can do this. Is there in your head to be like, I love this stuff now, I'm going to show you a challenge, to those first months being like, what have I done here? Well, I'll tell you, I think maybe, that's a great question, because I get that question a lot. I think maybe the first, oh my gosh, what did I get myself into, was probably my first day when I realized, one, we didn't even have high-speed internet. And we have no way of ordering pencils. We don't have a copier here, a computer. I didn't have any of that. That may have been my, moment. Mm-hmm. But I'll be honest with you. We have been in lightning speed mode. It's almost to the point I haven't even been able to think about 3 months into it or 4 months into it, like one of those moments, because all I can remember is I knew we had the date of when we wanted to announce. And I knew that was the end goal. That was that shining city on that hill. Yeah. That's when I knew we had to get, and then we had to back build from there. And so
again, you can't do it without a team, a capable team. They spent basically Christmas here, weekends. I made a lot of coffee runs, but it's one of those things that I look at and see the glass is half full, because I know what this is going to do to change the lives of Oklahomans. I know what this is going to do to change the trajectory of how Oklahoma does business, or how we educate, or how we do healthcare. And I blocked out all that noise. I mean, I can tell you I'm sure, as anyone can attest to, that, there'd be emails or there'd be phone calls or whatever the case, you guys, this and this and that. That was, to me, just noise. I had to focus. I had to make sure my team was focused, block out that noise. Sometimes it's hard to do because we're human, and you take it personally. But keep our eye on the ball. We got to get here. We get here, there will be crickets after that.
Yeah.
That's where we are.
Yeah.
And we're not slowing down.
No, and because there's still plenty of work left to do. Right?
Absolutely.
You're a year in, and this is a long process. And,
absolutely.
And that money comes in, and you guys got to get to work. And, like you said, you thought you'd only have 30-something projects. You have 140. So there's work to be done.
Lots of it.
You coach your kids soccer or baseball?
Football.
Oh,
my gosh.
I see the coaching you coming across.
Yeah, I'll tell you, it's funny because...
When you have time.
Yeah, Saturday. In fact, we got a game tomorrow. I grew up in a very competitive and athletic family. I had siblings that played college basketball, and we have just always been, kind of that sports mentality. And my kids that I have, they're 12 years old, and some have never played football before. And thank goodness it's flag. We have trouble flag. I can't even imagine trying to tackle these other teams, but it is a lot of fun. And again, you just try to teach teamwork. You teach optimism. You try to create working together as a team. You're not always going to win, but we know that we're going to get better every week. We've yet to win, but we're getting better every week. So we just continue to build upon what we've done, and my kids play hard, and that's all I can ask for. And I can translate that easily to my team.
Yeah.
My team, again, I think is the best, and they know what they have to do, and they're going to do their best, and I will always have their back. And I think my team knows that. And we know that there is so much negativity and cynicism out there, and it's just noise. It's just noise. We just got to keep our heads down. We got to block. We got to tackle. We do that and do our job. We're going to win.
Yeah. Finishing up, what's the one thing or the few things you wish people listening would know, and this is a chance to tell them, maybe a misconception or anything about broadband, the industry, whatever it is, even if it's just management?
I'll tell you, I want the people of Oklahoma to know, I want the internet service providers to know that we are all on the same team. We are all trying to connect people. We are all trying to change lives, whether it be economically, educationally, healthcare-wise, economic development-wise, whatever the case might be. And yes, these are competitive grants. And yes, some are going to score better than others. But there's opportunities for everyone. Not everyone has the business plan to participate up in the Panhandle. Not everyone has the opportunity or want to go in southeast Oklahoma and the really tough rural areas down there. We are all on the same team. Our job is to connect those Oklahomans who have never, and when I say never, I mean never, have had high-speed internet, so they can have their business, so they can hire people or improve their stature economically, or even more important than that grandmother who lives out of town a few miles, and her grandkids may live in an adjoining state, and they live out in the country. Mm-hmm. She's able to FaceTime them, watch them grow up, have that ability to communicate. Mm-hmm. If that is the only thing we do, we're going to make society better. We're going to make people better. We're going to make the world better. That's what we're doing here. We are changing the lives of Oklahomans for the better, not the worse.
Yeah. It's amazing how simple it is and how we just don't think about it because we grow up in the city, or we don't grow up in rural areas. You don't think of, like I said, that grandmother who, for me, I'm not from here, right? I wouldn't be able to see my parents if there wasn't
your accent never gave it away,
right? Exactly. But it's like I go home maybe once a year, right? Those are cherished times with my parents, but I FaceTime my family, like twice a week at least. So yeah, it's just that connectivity. I can't imagine what it's like if you're still, you're a grandmother or seeing their granddaughter or grandbaby, whatever it is, grow up right, through this device that we all have now. This mini computer that we carry around everywhere.
That's exactly right.
To run our lives.
And we're all Oklahomans. Yeah. We're all Americans. I've always believed this. A healthy rural Oklahoma is going to mean a healthy urban Oklahoma. Yeah. You work together. There's no more of this, urban versus rural, which, sometimes that can get muddy the waters. But we're all, this is a unifying issue. This is a unifying message. Yeah. Everyone deserves the opportunity and the right to be connected. Your tax dollars, these are your monies. Mm-hmm. This is what we're doing with it. And this is going to be something that we're going to be able to look back like our grandparents did with, the electrification of the 30s or even the highway system in the 1950s. This is our moment. And this is going to be something that we're going to be able to hang our hat on and say, we were part of that.
Yeah, it's a huge need and it's a huge impact when everything happens. And obviously, you guys have seen that in the first year. And like I said, just getting the ball started. So
that's right.
Thank you so much for your time. Love your enthusiasm, your work ethic, and your passion. It just comes through. And if people listening don't see that, they should re-listen to the episode or watch it on YouTube. But yeah, Director Sanders, thanks so much for your time. I appreciate you. Thanks for taking this position. I'm sure, like I said, at the time you didn't think this was probably what you wanted to do, but clearly it's, everyone finds their place. And
that's right.
Time for everything. So timing was right. And so I hope everyone enjoyed listening to this one. And for people listening, we'll catch you next episode. Cheers.
Hope you guys enjoyed that great episode. Thank you so much for listening. As always, huge shout out to our sponsors, the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, sharing Oklahoma story through its people since 1927. For more information on the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, go to www.oklahomahof.com and follow them on Instagram for daily updates at OklahomaHOF. Our other sponsor, the Chickasaw Nation, amazing sponsor. They do amazing things for the state, and they're always sponsoring something in Oklahoma. They're a huge supporter of Oklahoma, and without their support, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. And our third sponsor is Diffie Ford Lincoln down in El Reno. Now, this one makes me so happy because these guys are great friends of mine, play a lot of golf together. I've bought my cars from them, do most of my oil changes down there, have a cup of coffee, hang out down in El Reno. It's a good spot to go. And not only are they great friends, but they provide a great service. So for over 60 years, third generation family owned Oklahoma business down in El Reno. They're also in Bethany as well. So people in the Bethany area know the Diffies really well. But if you're looking for anything new, used, Ford, Lincoln, or whatever, I'm sure they could find anything you want. Check them out, diffieford.net, and then on Instagram at diffiefordlincoln.
This episode is presented by Citizens Bank of Edmond. Citizens Bank of Edmond has been serving Edmond since 1901. They pride themselves on investing in the community and are here for all your personal and business banking needs. For more information, go to mycitizens.bank and follow them on Instagram at citizensedmond, as well as go bank there, because I bank there too. It's been a fantastic personal experience for me. I've had my podcast account there now, my podcast business account there now for 4 years now, I think, and it's been fantastic. So definitely worth your time. They're a great group of people, and they're always there to answer the phone when I forget my password, because I seem to forget it daily. So yeah, go to Citizens Edmond and check them out. It's been awesome.
This episode is brought to you by the Doghouse OKC. Recently, I have been in need of some doggy daycare for my 2 pups, and the Doghouse have come in clutch. The team over there are incredible. They've taken care of my 2 golden doodles, and so it's been an honor to partner with them on the podcast and share the love. And the one thing that I do with the sponsors that I have is stuff that I use and recommend, like the Diffies with my car.
Hall of Fame. They're awesome. Citizens Bank's where I bank. Chickasaw Nation, huge supporter of Oklahoma. And adding to that is the doghouse. And so if you're in need of doggy daycare in the day or boarding overnight, they do grooming and other cool things too. But I've had a fantastic experience, and it's an honor and a privilege to share this with you too. So go to thedoghouseokc.com and follow them on Instagram at thedoghouseokc, and hopefully our pups will run into each other.
Thank you for listening. We are inspired by those around us and hope that you are too. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review so we can keep telling your stories. For more great Oklahoma content, follow This is Oklahoma on Facebook and Instagram.